If I told you that life could largely be characterized by suffering and that you and everybody you know is going to perish, you'd probably feel pretty uncomfortable with that truth. We like to live in fairy tale land, in a world of illusions. We don't like to really face reality. That is the topic of today's video, which is embracing Stoicism. So an ancient philosophy that was born in Greece and was largely popularized by the Romans. This whole school of thought is meant to make you be able to embrace the obstacles that life throws at us, the uncomfortable truths, so to speak, and to not just deal with them, but to thrive in the face of them. Let's go into the tenets of Stoicism and go over some of the core beliefs, the virtues that they espouse, who the prominent thinkers were throughout history, daily practices that you can put into your life to live in accordance with Stoic principles, as well as some of my favorite quotes from those thinkers. If before we get into it, you wouldn't mind tossing a thumbs up on this video and subscribing to our channel, that would be great. Stoicism is largely characterized by having four virtues reign supreme. Resilience, the ability to withstand pressure. Wisdom, the way that I've always thought about wisdom is knowledge is tools. It's information, essentially. Intelligence is your ability to use those tools or to apply that information. And wisdom is knowing what to do with that information. Courage, so the ability to act in the face of fear. And lastly, temperance, so being able to keep ourselves under control, not to give in to cheap desires, and to focus instead on the more important aspects of life. There's also the principle of letting go of control. The idea that we shouldn't worry about things that are outside of our control. We should just accept them as they are. I think it was Marcus Aurelius who came up with the concept of preferred indifference. Accepting things exactly as they are, and you can have your goals, you can have your desires, but not to lose yourself or lose control or become extremely emotional if things don't go that way. You could prefer to have a great job, but you should not live in depression or anxiety if you don't have those things. That you should still accept the world as it is, live in the present moment, and enjoy it as much as possible. A old mythological idea that the Stoics were a huge fan of is the Myth of Sisyphus. Obviously not a extremely realistic story, but it is that a man was caught cheating death by the Greek gods, and his punishment for cheating death was to be damned to eternity of rolling a rock up this hill, and every single time he would reach the top, the rock would come crumbling back down on him and he'd have to start again. And that was his punishment from the Greek gods, who were aggravated by the fact that he was transcending what it means to be human, essentially. In the face of this, Sisyphus decided that the only way to get back at the gods was to do the duty, to do the actions that he has been forsaken to do with nothing but passion, and to essentially enjoy himself doing it. There's a really good concept, which is involuntary suffering is what creates trauma. If he had just involuntarily been submitted to this act and felt like it was happening to him, then he would have experienced trauma. However, by voluntarily taking up that rock, pushing it with enthusiasm up the hill, looking forward to it, envisioning himself as happy in even the worst possible scenario, and he still decided to do that with grace and passion. And so the opposite end of involuntary suffering creates trauma is voluntary suffering creates transformation. That whole idea of the myth of Sisyphus is to embrace duty. No matter how much it sucks, do the act that has been put before you, and to do it with excitement and enthusiasm, which is actually the logo for for this channel, the man pushing a boulder up a hill. So some of the ways that you can practice Stoicism in your day-to-day life. A famous practice of the Stoics was to every morning set intentions for the day. And that doesn't mean to sit down and say, okay, I've got to do the groceries today, I've got to do the laundry, I got to get this done for work, but rather set intentions for the virtues that you're going to live up to those days. To sit down and think about what could you do today that would be courageous? What could you do today that would show temperance? What would you do today to show resilience? And how could you end the day more wise than you woke up? That is a good morning practice of Stoics. And then on the opposite end would be to, at the end of the night, journal or to think about the little wins. You know, did you not have that donut at the gas station when you were craving it? That's a win. Did you get your fat ass off the couch and go to the gym? That's a win. Another aspect is negative visualization. So a lot of people have these, say, affirmation board, think positive thoughts and positive things will come your way. And there is some truth to that, where the world does manifest itself to you largely how you approach it. But on the opposite end, you can't just sit around and pretend that life is all sunshine and rainbows. So what the Stoics did was they believed that you should envision what the worst possible scenario would be, getting fired from your job, to not just ignore that that is a potential reality, but to embrace it, to think about what you would do in the face of that obstacle. And that way, when things arise, you are more capable of dealing with them. The last principle that you can work into your day-to-day is looking at obstacles as opportunities. Let's say somebody was constructing walls in front of you, and the first one they made, you just barely were able to jump over, to get over. And then they decided after you got over that one, okay, I'm gonna build a higher wall. Then you can look at that and go, oh, that's too high for me to jump over. Or you can say, I want to become the type of person that is capable of jumping over that obstacle. So to look at obstacles as opportunities to better yourself, to not try to live a life of comfort, but rather to be the type of person that can withstand discomfort. The prominent thinkers in Stoicism, there's kind of three that everybody goes back to. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous books written of all time is Meditations. Seneca the Young, he was a statesman and a playwright, and he was Emperor Nero's right-hand man, which is ironic because Seneca was a very wise man, and Nero is thought of as one of those Roman emperors who kind of got high on his own supply, so to say. The last prominent thinker was Epictetus. Very different from the first two, seeing as he wasn't part of the elite in Rome. In fact, he was born a slave. Let's go into some of their quotes or thoughts. Epictetus: if anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, he was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone. This is a very, very important one, I think, because, you know, all of us, we get extremely defensive anytime somebody thinks of us the way that we don't want them to. But the fact is you cannot determine people's perceptions of you. If somebody's speaking ill of you, carry on. That is essentially the best payback you can ever get. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. This goes back to that preferred indifference aspect, where if you spend your entire life chasing the next thing, you just want the next shinier thing. So to live a good life, you need to have few desires, or at least high quality desires. So such as, I want to be healthy and fit, and not low quality desires, which is, I want to be rich and famous. Actually, the Stoics hated the concept of fame. Moving on to another one here. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. You can go around and proselytize all you want about this is how we should act, or this is how we should be, or tell people what would be good for them. But the best way to affect change in a positive manner is to embody good aspects, good virtues, good values, and you'll see everybody follow suit along the way. Moving on to Seneca. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. Every one of us likes to think that our life would be completely different if we only had a certain amount of stroke of luck, or if just something would cross our path, whether it be winning the lottery or getting that dream job or whatever it is. But the reality is that many people don't spend the time preparing to take advantage of those opportunities. For instance, I'm somebody who has gotten many job opportunities in the past that I shouldn't have. I've booked clients that I have no business working with that are, say, international brands, but I prepared like crazy. And for the first 6 months I was doing this, I spent 12 hours a day or so learning the ins and outs of cameras, editing, and so on. Moral of the story is put the work in before the opportunity arises so that you can capture it, because if you aren't prepared, then you are just going to fall short when you have that chance come your way. If you really want to escape the things that harass you, what you're needing is not to be in a different place, but to be a different person. And again, this is such a good perspective to have, because many of us think that we would be happy or life would just be amazing if I just had a little bit more money, or I had this or I had that. But it's actually your perspective on things that bother you. The way to have a carefree life is to not get sidetracked by problems, to not get burdened by them, to know that you are capable of dealing with them. If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. This is so important, because many people are just walking around aimless in life. If you ask them what they want to do, what their dream job would be, as kids, we have all of this imagination and direction as to being like, I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be this, or I want to be that, and so on. And actually, public school is designed to instill certain behavioral traits to turn us into mindless automaton industrial workers. But anyways, you need to know what you are working towards. You can't win a race that you don't know where the finish line is. And that's not to say that there is a finish line per se in life, but you need to know where you're headed. If you're not sure where you want to go in life, it's much easier to ask yourself, what do I not want life to be? And you can use that as an anchor to find out what the opposite is and start pushing you in the other direction. Moving on to Marcus Aurelius here. It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. So many people live in fear on a day-to-day basis that they become paralyzed and they're unable to take action. And then they just end up living in this life of I just don't want bad things to happen to me. I just don't want bad things to happen to me. Instead of actually living in the face of that, I'm thinking, I'm going to be the type of person that can live a good life. And that's something that you actually have to internalize and take very seriously. I want to sit down and watch TV and do nothing like the rest of the world, but I've thought about that consequence, which is, do I want to sit back at the end of my day and think about the 3 hours or 2 hours or whatever it is that the average person spends in front of the TV every single day, just wasting their life away, just trying to numb themselves to reality? When you start thinking about death on a deep level, it actually allows you to live a little bit freer. If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth, by which no one was ever truly harmed. It is the person who continues in his self-deception and ignorance who is harmed. This is a great one, because I look at knowledge or truth or whatever it be, perspectives, as tools that I can use to better my life. So I would be stupid if I'm trying to build something of importance. Like, let's say I'm trying to build a house and somebody comes along to me and says, hey, I've got this power saw. I see that you are struggling with this hand saw. I'd be an idiot to not accept that as the better alternative, the better tool to get the job done. So look at truth very much in the same. Truth is what allows us to operate in accordance with reality, and any untruths that you hold are actually just hindering your ability to act accordingly with life. I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men, but yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinions of others. That one's just mind-blowing for that aspect of every philosophical school of thought puts a great deal of emphasis on self-evaluation. If you are looking to others and their opinions of you to reshape how you feel about yourself, you are going to be lost for eternity and never be happy, because you cannot control what people think of you. You need to start having a real opinion of yourself. It goes both ways, because let's say I've gained weight before and say been 20 pounds, 30 pounds heavier than I want to be. In those moments when I say something along the lines of like, oh, fuck, I'm really out of shape right now and I don't like that about myself or whatever. And then you have somebody around you that goes, no, what are you talking about? You're just fine. You're doing great. I look at that and go, first of all, that person is probably just fatter than you and doesn't want you to say that you're fat, because then that would mean that they have to accept that they're fat as well. But on that aspect, like, you know, insincere flattery is just going to hold you back. And on the other end, insincere criticism is going to keep you hindered as well. So you really need to look to your life, looking back at saying what would be the perfect life for me, then understanding, okay, what would it take? What behaviors and traits would I have to embody in order to get that perfect life? Figure out what it is you want, figure out what it would take for you to be proud of yourself, and embody that moment to moment. Not, I'm gonna do it next week, I'm gonna take this step. It's like, you have to immediately say, I am going to act with what I know is right on a day-to-day basis, on a moment-to-moment basis. I am going to do the right thing, and you have to decide what is right and wrong. Do not let anybody decide that for you. If you want to learn more about Stoicism, I highly suggest going and reading the original texts from Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus. The best out of those three, I think, is Aurelius's Meditations. If you want a more modern take on Stoicism, I highly suggest checking out Ryan Holiday and the Daily Stoic. He breaks down a lot of the ideas that the Stoics propagated through their writings. If before I get out of here, you wouldn't mind tossing a thumbs up on this video, subscribing to the channel, that would be greatly appreciated, as this is a new project and I would like to get the ball rolling sooner than later. That first couple pushes is always tough going up that hill, but once you get motion, it starts going. So if you could help me out with that motion, I'd greatly appreciate it. We'll see you next time.